Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner, joined today with Naomi. It feels like it's been a while since we've both jumped on a review.
It has.
And
I've been to America and back.
And this is usually the case, like when I call you on the show, it's that, you haven't seen the film. This is me giving my own review. I like having someone to bounce off of. You have seen
for the cinema.
You have seen the trailer for this film, though, that we're going to be reviewing right now. We're actually going to be doing another movie review right after this one on a separate stream. But for right now, I'll be giving my review on All Is True, which is the Kenneth Branagh directed movie based on the retirement years, the autumn years of the playwright William Shakespeare. I didn't even know this movie was coming out until a matter of weeks ago. I think it was when I went to see Glass. I got a trailer for this thing, and then I got another trailer for it when I went to see Mary, Queen of Scots. And I mean, Shakespeare, I've got it right here. I got it prepared, ready for this review. This is the complete works of William Shakespeare. It is this monstrous book with incredibly thin paper. This is the kind of paper where you have to wear special protective, like, white gloves and, like, delicately, like, move the paper over. I love Shakespeare. I always have, studied it at school, whether it, GCSE English literature, A-level. I know a lot of people are very put off by Shakespeare, but honestly, next to Tolkien, is without a doubt my favorite writer. Poetry, the plays, everything. So I always love as much Shakespeare stuff as you can throw at me, essentially. And then when I see a trailer with Kenneth Branagh, Sir Kenneth Branagh, Dame Judi Dench, and Sir Ian McKellen. There's a lot of sirs and dames in this movie.
They basically just looked at the Queen's on his list and were like, okay, here's our cast.
Yeah, it's like, let's get every prominent actor other than Derek Jacobi that's performed a Shakespeare play at the Royal Shakespeare Company or the Globe Theatre at some point in their lives, and let's get them in a movie together.
So did they get Emma Thompson?
They didn't get Emma Thompson. They should have done. I love Emma Thompson. Actually, she might have been a better fit, perhaps. Not to say that Judi Dench did a bad performance, but Emma Thompson would have been cool as his wife, maybe.
Yeah, I can see her going for Anne Hathaway. I mean, she was in actually, maybe not because of her and Kenneth Branagh, their history. Ooh.
Oh, that's yes, of course. How did I forget that? Of course, yeah. Very
drama,
yes.
Because they were Beatrice and Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing, which is one of my favorite Shakespeare. In fact, I think it's my actual favorite Shakespeare play of all time. And they're beautiful together, but then after the drama where he cheated on her with Helena Bonham Carter, it's like, yeah.
But so I saw the trailer for this thing, and I was like, I need to see this movie. When's it coming out? And I was like, oh, it's coming out in 2 weeks' time. Apparently, this movie got an early limited screening, I believe, in the US around the 21st of December, late December sometime, because they wanted to try and get it eligible for this year's Academy Awards, and unfortunately, it hasn't been nominated for any. And it came out today for us in the UK, so I did a double screening with this and the Lego Movie. Nothing connects the two, so there's no kind of double feature, but I just needed to get both watched. And yeah, we're going to get into the review now. So as I said, you've seen the trailer, so you'll be throwing questions at me and stuff like that in moments where I falter or if I go off the rails. You've got to keep this on track. This is the task that I'm appointing to you, Naomi.
I'm trying. I'll also say that I am a huge fan of William Shakespeare. I've studied his plays. I've actually performed some of his plays. I've been to Royal Shakespeare Theatre and Globe Theatre numerous times. Stratford-upon-Avon is basically one of my favorite places.
Mine too.
I mean, it's just a train ride I can just take from my house. But yeah, as I said, Much Ado is my favorite. I love just looking up all the scripts of it and just speaking those amazing lines. And one of my favorite shows at the moment is Upstart Crow, which, if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Same writer, because All Is True is also written by Ben Elton, who's one of my favorite writers. But Upstart Crow is obviously more comedic and more like Blackadder, whilst this seems a bit more serious.
Yeah, this one's definitely more grounded. There are some funny lines in there, definitely. I wasn't aware that Ben Elton had written this thing until the ending credits, and I was like, oh, that doesn't really seem like a Ben Elton topic matter. I know he has written stuff like Shakespeare before. Even in Blackadder, I think in every single season of Blackadder, there's a reference, or I think in season 1 especially, there's a part that directly rips off Macbeth or is a homage to Macbeth. And there's even a scene in one Blackadder episode where he goes back in time and beats up and assaults William Shakespeare.
That was the Millennium film, yeah. And then, Blackadder 1, they mock a lot of King Richard III.
That's it. Yeah, it's Richard III, and I know they do like the whole ghost at the banquet table as well. So I guess it is maybe in there.
Horse,
yeah,
kingdom for a horse.
I mean, this movie's called All Is True, which is an alternative name for Henry VIII, the play Henry VIII. And that might be a slightly misleading title in terms of the context of this movie itself, in that it should be called like All Is Embellishment, I guess, or All Is Hyperbole, because I don't know. I think a lot of this movie was probably fabricated from very few scant notes of history of the life of William Shakespeare. They've got people's names, they've got people they married and how many kids they had, but in terms of all like the very soap opera kind of drama that went on between that family, that's obviously not going to be known to anyone really, so they would have had to have fabricated most of it. And usually I like my historical films to be as accurate as possible. I've always said that.
Same.
But I'm not going to come down on a movie. If it's still a very entertaining movie and it's a good movie, I always bring this up as my first example. Braveheart, very, very different movie to this, but Braveheart's one of the most wildly historically inaccurate movies out there. But it's still in my top 10 movies of all time. I think it's a phenomenal feat of cinema across the board. So whilst I do prefer it to be as accurate as possible, because I know that a lot of people are going to see a movie like this and take it as gospel, with a lot of these kind of movies, you really can't, and you really do have to realize that this has been constructed as a product, essentially, to sell to people, for audiences to go and see. But that being said, like the movie itself, the pacing of this, it is a very slow movie, and it is kind of, you are wrapped up in this family dynamic. You're seeing William Shakespeare, who's lived a big bulk of his life away from his family. Like, his family have been living in Stratford. He's made his career in London, obviously the big city where he's performed loads of his plays. He's ran the Globe Theatre. And then the opening of this movie opens with a text screen where, during a performance of Henry VIII, during, I think it was Act 1, Scene 4 or something like that, a cannon misfires and it causes a huge fire at the Globe Theatre, which burns it to the ground. And then we have Shakespeare returning to Stratford, refusing to write any more plays, seemingly like he's lost his soul almost. He's lost that fire, he's lost that muse within himself to continue his writing and his work. And he returns to his family, and because they haven't seen much of him, he essentially has to reestablish his relationship with just his, with his wife, with his daughters, and adjust to that family life more so than his career life. And I think in terms of the performances, they absolutely did that brilliantly. One of the best scenes in the movie, and I don't want to go too much into spoilers of this, but a crucial aspect of the movie is Shakespeare dealing with the loss of his son, Hamnet. Not Hamlet. Hamnet was his son, who passed away, I think, at the age of 11 or something like that. And Shakespeare wasn't present for his son's death. And when he returns, he's sort of grieving. He wanted that son, he wanted that legacy. And it does play into the social structure of women are meant to find a husband and have children. And his son would have been like his actual legacy to carry on the name of Shakespeare. And, there's a lot of truths and a lot of lies that have been kept from Shakespeare regarding the death of his son in the film. And because a lot of it is him mourning, and his family have already mourned for the loss of his son, we have scenes where, the daughter feels left out, she feels neglected, she feels lost, and she feels like she doesn't have a close-knit relationship with her dad. And there's a scene where the camera's pretty much just kept static in the room. And I think Kenneth Branagh said that in terms of the lighting of this film, he has kept it to, when it's set in interior, is mostly lit by candlelight, which I think there was another film that did recently. The Favourite, one of the Oscar picks, also did that. And the camera just kind of stays there. And it is almost like you're watching a stage production where you're literally just watching this family, this drama, them argue, them cry. And Kenneth Branagh just breaks down. And this movie really does showcase all of the talent of these people. Whilst the actual subject matter of the movie itself may be greatly embellished and things are dialed up for drama for the actual movie, one thing you cannot fault are the performances. I loved Kenneth Branagh in this as Shakespeare. The way that people talk doesn't feel akin to the times, because this would have been post-Elizabethan, I believe. I think.
Yeah, because he was like around, and died in 1616, I think it was.
I think
Yeah,
Elizabeth
and
died
Elizabeth
1603,
died
didn't she?
1603. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, a whole history's not right here.
Yeah, I just remember that date 1603 because I remember specifically having to do that in history A level. But
I watched Horrible Histories on binge, like with the like the comedic show with on CBBC.
yeah,
Like that's how I know everything. And also I had all the books and the magazines.
hey, if it makes you learn history, it's all good. I used to watch the animated version of Horrible Histories back on CITV.
I had that as well, and they actually had a lot of sketches with William Shakespeare as well. Especially one with where they have it of Shakespeare on Mastermind of like words that I made up. Which actually I have a little notepad with all of them on there.
Oh, wow.
I forgot that was down there.
I bought so much Shakespeare stuff. So I mean, I've got this. I've got the.
Like I said, been to RSC so many times. Been to Globe Theatre in London.
Every time I go to Stratford, I have to buy a little bit of something from the Royal Shakespeare Company. What else? I bought a 2B pencil, and because it had 2B or not 2B written on it, as in 2.
I was going to ask that.
And I'm a sucker for puns, so I had to buy that. And I also bought a small book of all the insults from William Shakespeare's works, which I really need to learn and use in conversation more.
Yeah, the words we get now, which we owe to Shakespeare, such as like too much of a good thing, naked truth, all's well that ends well, wild goose chase. He even came up with knock knock, who's there? But joking with that.
Going back to the movie, though, I mean, Ian McKellen is all the way through the trailer of this movie, and I thought that we were going to get a lot of that back and forth with William Shakespeare losing his way, Ian McKellen coming in and basically having the role of, you need to start writing again, William, like the world needs to hear your words, essentially. And Ian McKellen's only in one scene in this movie. It is probably... He's
in one scene and they give him, like, top billing?
Yeah, pretty much.
I did longer or shorter than Judi Dench in Shakespeare in Love?
I can't remember her in Shakespeare in Love, so he's probably in it more than that, in that he is memorable in this film.
She won an Oscar for 8 minutes!
I will own up, I haven't seen Shakespeare in Love. I do profess to love Shakespeare, but I haven't seen that movie. I have it on DVD.
Shakespeare in Love. After we do our reviews, you need to go watch it because it is so campy and so kind of out there with just everything that it is, that it's kind of hard not to laugh. And
beat Saving Private Ryan to Best Picture, if I believe. I think that was the same year, controversially. But no,
I would say that Shakespeare in Love is not a better picture than Saving Private Ryan, but at least like with Shakespeare in Love, it's kind of humorous and it's got that kind of campy nature, which is just fun to watch if you really want to just have a laugh and laugh at people rather than with.
And speaking of campy nature, let's get back to Ian McKellen.
He's our king of camp.
Yeah, I love Ian McKellen. Not just obviously.
How can you not?
I know, right? Like, I mean, not just because he's Gandalf.
Ooh, love a talk.
Well, especially because he's Gandalf mostly, but like he's fantastic in everything he's in, and obviously he began his career on the stage doing Shakespeare stuff like this, and he absolutely kills it in the one scene that he's in. And one thing that I'm very glad that this movie brought up is that I think a third of, or a big collection of the sonnets that Shakespeare wrote were dedicated to a man and not his wife or not anyone else. And there's been, a lot of ambiguity surrounding Shakespeare's sexuality, and I'm very glad that this movie did bring that up. Ian McKellen plays the Earl of Southampton, who is passing through Stratford, I believe, or on his way to somewhere, and he wants to call in to Shakespeare, who's an old friend. And that old friend, the Earl of Southampton, is the one that, in the context of this movie, is the one that William Shakespeare did write all his sonnets for. And there is this moment where, Shakespeare's saying, I wrote these, it came from the heart. And he's about to say, like, I love you kind of thing. And, he did have that connection with him, romantic connection. And he quotes one of the sonnets in the film. And I will get onto that. There is a lot of Shakespeare hype, especially towards the end of this movie, which if you're not a fan of Shakespeare, well, why would you go and see this movie? Why would you watch this movie anyway? But if you were curiously checking this movie out, if you're not into Shakespeare's writing, like, you're going to tune out hard when it gets to those moments. But he quotes the sonnet. I can't remember exactly which sonnet number it is. I am familiar with the sonnet itself, but the numbers get hazy for me. I think that got burned out of me in A-level English literature when I was trying to remember so many quotes and which sonnet was which for my essays. And he says, like, was your love reciprocated? And Ian McKellen's sort of, you forget yourself, William. Like, you know, you're a fantastic playwright. I admire your work. I find a lot of beauty in it. And he kind of, you know, lets him down gently, essentially, and doesn't confess it. And as he gets up to leave, you know, to take his leave and ride on to wherever he needs to go, he stops and he repeats the sonnet back to Shakespeare to say that, yeah, there was some kind of connection there. And on the flip side, what they tap into as well is they talk about, you know, Shakespeare, and a lot of slander gets leveled against the family. Some of it turns out to be true in this movie. But, you know, regarding his daughter being adulterous, his other daughter marrying someone who's quite, you know, debauched, and he's like got another girl pregnant and he leaves her to get with Shakespeare's daughter. So there's a lot of, it's a very religious community that they live in, essentially. And there's all this like slander going around, essentially.
England at that time was basically like Protestant Catholic heads to
exactly.
head.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, William Shakespeare comes back and, you know, people are like talking about his honor and everything like that. And Judi Dench has a great scene where she has a heart to heart with her husband and says, you know, I read all these sonnets. You talk about a you know, like a dark girl, a dark, beautiful girl that you wrote a bunch of sonnets for, and then a man as well. And she says, like, did you ever stop to think about my reputation? Like, I did read all these things that you wrote. Who were they addressed to? So they do play into that dynamic as well. And I was really glad that they touched on that, because I haven't seen many Shakespeare films that do talk about that stuff. So I like that they did that.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't think I've really seen any Shakespeare films that really, or like any Shakespeare media that really does tackle into this kind of last day of Shakespeare and just kind of like being able to wrap everything up.
Yeah.
For him. But I just want to know, like, because The Tempest was, they think, is the last play that Shakespeare ever wrote. Do they ever mention that in this, or nah?
I don't recall any direct references to The Tempest. He doesn't start writing it or anything like that. There's a reference to Macbeth and Dunsinane, the woods of moving to Dunsinane, which JXE has actually brought up in the comments on the video right now. I talked about my favorite writers being Tolkien and Shakespeare, and apparently Tolkien hated Shakespeare, despite there being many comparisons between their work. He's written them here. He's put, think of the prophecy, no one of, what was it, woman born or whatever, with like Eowyn kind of thing. There's a slight parallel there, I guess, or whatever it is, the woman killing the Witch King. You've got the great Birnam Wood marching to Dunsinane is like the Ents at the end of Two Towers. And then Midsummer Night's Dream with elves and everything. So there is some comparison there, I guess. One of my favorite actors in this movie, though, who actually isn't credited on Wikipedia for some reason, is Catherine Walder, who plays Judith Shakespeare. She gets a lot of emotional moments in this movie where she does the sort of like family drama scenes, essentially. She has worked with Kenneth Branagh quite a lot. She's worked on the Winter's Tale and Romeo and Juliet for stage shows, and she was also in Murder on the Orient Express, credited as prostitute.
She's here on IMDb, and she's actually been in like the Branagh Live Theatre as well. So where she was in like Romeo and Juliet and everything. And I mean, she was an extra in Ready Player One.
Oh, sweet. And I mean, Judi Dench herself, she was in Murder on the Orient Express as well, the Kenneth Branagh directed version of the Agatha Christie Poirot character. I love that film, by the way. And, you know, Branagh has proven himself a competent director, a very diverse director as well, not just doing Shakespeare plays, but he directed the first Thor movie. I think he did like a Jack Reacher movie as well, I believe. So
Kenneth Branagh also did Disney remake of Cinderella.
He did.
Get that.
Which I haven't seen, so I can't comment on it. But I know my thoughts on live-action Disney versions, so I guess we can just leave that there, because that's a debate for another time.
Aesthetically, it's nice. Story-wise, it's not.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say.
So he does seem like a director that does collaborate with a lot of people on a regular basis. Returning to do the score for the movie, the music, is Patrick Doyle, who he's worked with on the first Thor movie.
It's basically like a John Williams Steven Spielberg thing they have.
So you can tell that, they have a good working relationship, and, I hope he does continue to use Patrick Doyle, because I think his scores are phenomenal, especially Murder on the Orient Express and the first Thor movie, which is by far the best music in a Marvel movie, as opposed
Patrick
to
Doyle also did
stuff.
music in Much Ado About Nothing, so obviously he already has that experience with like Shakespearean music, and I think he's actually in Much Ado About Nothing. Can someone check that for me? That he plays, I think he plays either like one of the actual musicians, or he's like
I could see him doing that. Let me have a look to see.
Or he's like meant to be one of the. Oh, actually, Ben Elton is in Much Ado About Nothing. I forgot that he's like a sidekick to Michael Keaton, and Michael Keaton's crazy in this film.
Yeah, you're right. Patrick Doyle is in the movie as Balthazar, Don Pedro's musician. That's a good shout. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Nice bit of trivia there.
Much Ado About Nothing. It's so good.
It's great. And if not, like, watch it before you go and see John Wick Chapter 3 coming out later this year.
Oh, yeah, because Keanu Reeves. I almost forgot, because, like, he tries. Damn it. Oh, my gosh, he tries.
He's great. We should review that movie at some point.
Yeah.
I watched that in, like, GCSE. I need to watch that film again. I remember it being good.
I love it, but, like, Keanu Reeves. I mean, if you've seen Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's bit better than that performance. But
God, yeah, that's the pit. Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I know where the bastard sleeps. I brought him there.
Whoa. But yeah, I mean, I've said pretty much everything I can on this movie. Do you have any other questions you can fire at me at the end, or are you set on watching this movie?
I want to kind of touch on. There's a whole thing going on at the moment. I've seen a lot of it on social media with the casting of Dame Judi Dench. I love Judi Dench, but her as Anne Hathaway, and there seems to be an extreme age gap between Anne Hathaway and William Shakespeare in this film. I don't know if it's just undercasting or if it has anything to do with the film. Hello?
She does refer in the movie to the fact that she is older. And when she married him, like, it might have been like a toy boy kind of thing. I didn't do the maths before this, so I don't know how old she was compared to William Shakespeare in real life, if there was a considerable age gap between the two, or if they've dialed that up for this movie. I don't know. I didn't do the maths on that, so numbers aren't my strong point. Words are okay. I can get.
He was 18 and she was 26 when they married.
Okay, so there's like a 10-year, roughly 10-year, 8 to 10 year. Yeah, no, they've messed that up then in terms of the casting. I think Judi Dench is like 83 at this point, isn't she? I think she is. I will check.
It's rude to ask a woman that age, but
okay,
when
so
you have IMDb.
Kenneth Branagh's 58. I will quickly check how old.
She was born 1934, 9th of December.
I believe. I think I checked beforehand. I think she is in her 80s. If she's not now, I'm going to look like.
Yeah,
she's 84. She's 84. 84. Wow. Damn. So yeah, perhaps they did miscast her.
Yeah, they fucked up.
Yeah, but Judi Dench is a great actress, so.
I mean, nothing against Judi Dench. Like I said, I love her. Not sure she should have got an Oscar for 8 minutes, but that's because they fucked up. Oscars always fuck up at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm a little annoyed because just talking as someone who has like played in Shakespearean plays and has gone through it all, especially seeing like some of my friends as actresses and seeing them grow. It is annoying when directors don't seem to get the age right, and it's either like very, very young or very, very old, and there's no seemingly in between. What's up with that, Hollywood? What's up with that?
I think in terms of like stage shows, because you're watching a stage play, you can kind of suspend your disbelief. If you're watching, see, I went to see Antony and Cleopatra years and years ago when I was at school, and it was a fairly modern retelling. Like there was a scene where Antony said like, I will ride to such and such a place, and then he puts on like his mirrored aviator shades and like a suit and walks off. You know that they wouldn't have had those at the time, so there is a lot of suspension of disbelief, and that kind of goes in hand with the age of actors as well. Like if they've got a good actor for the part, I'm usually not opposed to that. With a movie that's purporting to be the real life story of William Shakespeare, and they're going out of their way to get dates correct and everything like that, and then you do get to that where there is a considerable age difference, then yeah, maybe that is a discrepancy there.
Like you should have got, if it's true to what it is, and you have Kenneth Branagh in his 50s, then you should have got an actress who's in her 60s.
Yeah.
That should have worked. I mean, again, nothing against Judi Dench. Love her to bits. One of the best M's we had in the Bond series. But let's make it fair for all the other actresses who could have been Anne Hathaway and, you know.
Maybe they should have cast Emma Thompson, because if she's playing the role,
she would have actually been closer to the age. I think she's in her 50s as well.
She's only a year older than Kenneth Branagh, but they could have made her up to be a little bit older in appearance.
I mean, I love Emma Thompson, but as I said this before the live, she and Kenneth Branagh were in Much Ado About Nothing together as Beatrice and Benedict. However, there is drama between them.
No, but this is my point. So this movie is about William Shakespeare coming back and having a very strained relationship with his wife. You know, they're sleeping in separate beds. They're not close at all. They feel like strangers. That would have been perfect, because they could draw on real life experiences for that. It probably would have been absolute hell filming.
Branagh, why didn't you think of that? We should have done this movie.
Like they may have approached each other on set before a take and just like shook hands and just like got on with it. But like I could
definitely see them still being like civil about it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like continuing on with it.
And it's been a good amount of years. You know, it's been over 20 years now since they divorced. So.
And Kenneth Branagh isn't exactly sleeping with Helena Bonham Carter anymore.
No, and neither is Tim Burton.
Hey!
Wow, she went from Kenneth Branagh to Tim Burton. Like, she hit her goth phase late in life. Like, wow. But yes, enough about celebrity spouses and relationship problems. That's all I can say on. I was going to say all is lost there. All is true.
Let's take a shot. Okay.
I will get the title of this movie right.
We said before the stream, take a shot every time he says all is lost, because he kept saying it before the stream.
I know that the title's based on, like, it's an alternative title for the play Henry VIII, but it's the most vacuous title for a movie ever. It's so forgettable.
I mean, if you're making a biographic film, you know that things are going to be dramatized for, well, as it says, dramatic effect.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not exactly like how it was exactly in Bohemian Rhapsody, so it's not exactly going to be like this when all is true.
Like, I got to the ticket kiosk today, and I knew I was going to see this movie. I knew I was going to see the Lego Movie right afterwards, but my mind completely forgot what this movie was called. Like, I knew it was the Kenneth Branagh Shakespeare movie in my head. So I got to the front and I was like, "Can I get one for?" And then my head was like, "Tumbleweed." Going through my brain, and I panicked and I was like, the Shakespeare movie, and they just looked at me like, what? Like, give me a title. And I had to like look at the board and like wait for it to go to the next screen and go, I was going to say all is lost again. I almost said it.
You said it now. I'm still counting it.
I'm fucking up now. We need to round this off. So I'm embarrassing myself now on the stream. So that'll do it for my review on All Is True. And I will get it right eventually. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this movie. If this is indeed released in the US, as I said, I don't know if this is getting a re-release in the US.
It just says 2019.
If you missed your limited release screening and it's not coming back, I know that some people have been messaging me about Stan and Ollie, and that's not coming to the US. They got a limited release, and that was all they're getting for that movie. They're really keeping these British films away from you guys. I don't know why.
Like, dang, guys, might want to have to come over here to just watch movies.
Shakespeare is incredibly far-reaching. When I went to see Antony and Cleopatra at the Royal Shakespeare Company, there were probably more American people in that audience than there were British. It's like, Shakespeare is like international. Of course he is. But
well,
yeah.
I mean, when you see the UK, you think the Queen, Corgis, Big Ben, and Shakespeare.
Yeah, and
also some points of Piers Morgan, but we don't talk about him.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, you're going to end this review on talks of Piers Morgan. Blah, blah. Okay. But yeah, if you have seen this movie, please do comment. Let us know what you thought of it. Let us know some of your favorite Shakespeare plays, favorite Kenneth Branagh films, or favorite Kenneth Branagh Shakespeare films. We are going to go live right after this one. I'm going to set up a new stream, and we're going to go live for my review on the Lego Movie 2, the second part. So stick around for that if you can. And until the next stream, we'll see you then. Bye, guys.